And welcome to the Lifted Talks podcast. I'm joined here with Tony Villafane. Is that how you pronounce it? Tony Villafane?
Yep, you got it.
Tony Villafane. Thank you so much. Can you introduce yourself to those who are watching?
Yeah. So what's up, everybody? My name is Tony Villafane. I reside in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I am a pastor, a youth pastor at a church, Gateway Church specifically in Parksburg, Pennsylvania. But I am originally from Annapolis, Maryland. And man, like I said, with my job, I oversee 5th through 12th grade students. And so that's a little bit about me.
That's amazing. And I'm interested in hearing, how was your 2020 last year? Everyone experienced it a little bit differently. I want to know, what was your frame of mind like?
Yeah, great question. And I'm sure you get 100 different responses to 100
Right.
different people that you ask, right? For me, man, I'm an optimist at heart, and I can be an optimist to a fault sometimes. But it sucked, like hardcore sucked. But I was doing my personal best to be optimistic, to find the good in life, to find the positive, the small blessings, and obviously that was a discipline. It wasn't easy, especially with how horrendous the majority of the year was.
Right.
But yeah, like it sucked. And as an extrovert, also I'm a massive extrovert. I didn't like being quarantined. I'm surprised I didn't spiral into a deep depression. If you think about the scale of extroversion to introversion, if this is introversion, this is the middle of you're an ambivert, the idea of being both introvert and extrovert, and then over here is extrovert. I'm way over here
I
on
like the
that side of.
same scale, right?
Yeah. So I don't know how to be introverted. Ironically enough, my wife is highly introverted. And so they say the phrase opposites attract. Well, that was very true for us. Again, the love of my life, my bride, she is the yin to my yang, but she's also some of the opposites of who I am.
That's
And
amazing.
it somehow works beautifully. So
Right. Well, that tends to be how it works, right? Someone who is like receiving all your energy, you want to give that energy to someone. That's how I think of it, at least. Like someone who's willing to
oh, totally.
receive. That's how you guys. Yeah. Right. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, what practices did you do last year to make sure you're in the right frame of mind? Like,
Again, even as you think about a lot of things were ripped away from us in 2020. And you, even though I'm an optimist, you also can't step into unrealism, which if I'm not careful, sometimes that can happen. And so there's such a healthiness to actually mourning the loss of a job, mourning the loss of for high school students a graduation that didn't happen in person, even their high school prom that didn't happen,
that's me. That's
or
me.
okay, there you go, right? And so
Right.
so there's a healthiness to mourning it, without letting it define you, I guess is a good way to put it. With it's okay to be sad, it's okay to be upset, but don't sit there, don't stay there. You don't have to be dictated by the mourning or dictated by the circumstance that is unfortunate or that's difficult. And this is kind of like that, almost like that self-talk, if you will, where you almost don't allow yourself to spiral into a
Right.
depression or an
Right. Right.
anxiety over that. And so being willing to, again, fight for what you see as the good, what do you see as the positive, what do you see as the small blessings
I
or gifts
agree.
that, right? And so now, in the name of things getting ripped away, the next thing I'll say can be uh, easier said than done. However, still trying to find things that fill your tank. And so being willing to sit with, okay, what do I get excited about? What fills me with energy, makes me feel good about life. And so I know that, in 2020, there was a lot of things that were ripped away from us. That I was like, oh, well, that gets me excited about life, but I can't do that. This gets me excited, but I can't do that. So you may have to find some creativity in that. But for me, I love reading, and I love the ability just to sit with a book and process and hear from someone who is much smarter than me or that was wiser than me when they once lived, etc. And so that fills my tank. And so I was able to do that. Being with people was something I was not able to do as well when during the pandemic and during COVID in
Right.
2020. But I tried my best to still do things that filled my tank with extroverting. I'm texting people more, I'm FaceTiming people more, doing these things that maybe I didn't do as much because I was always with people, but they're still, thank you to technology, we have abilities to still connect. And so
That's amazing.
yeah, and then obviously in the 2020 when there's a lot of negativity, man, this is a principle that can go even beyond what we saw as 2020, but surround yourself with positive people. There's so much negativity in the world, and it's toxic and it's unhealthy. And again, we don't want to act like bad things don't exist, but there's a point where it's like, okay, enough is enough. Let's stop talking negative. Let's stop acting like the world is falling apart. Kind of is, but let's at least like try to surround ourselves with positive people that are going to
Right.
help reinforce healthiness in your life. And just again, be a person who is I don't know, again, willing to fight for the positive rather than always look at the negative, because it's so easy to resort to the negative. It's so easy to resort to what you're pissed off about. It
Right.
takes more discipline to say, no, what am I thankful for, and what are people around me that can help build into that for me.
Right. And that's such an important piece of advice. I think we could all use some of that right now. But like, for example, I'm not gonna take a blind eye or turn a blind eye to all the suffering that people endured last year.
Of
However,
course.
as you said, there like at this point, it's come down to, are you going to join the negative side, or are you going to observe the negative side and stay positive? Like that's what it comes down to. Which side are you going to join? I always thought of it as like a battle of the consciousnesses. Are you going to
Oh
give
yeah.
in to the negative side of your egotistic side, the one that's trying to keep you from being spiritual, keep you from finding truth, keep you from finding happiness, true happiness? Or are you going to give into the
Yeah.
momentary pleasures of, or the instinctual desires, animalistic negative tendencies of selfishness and anger and sadness and negativity? That's generally what it is.
No, and honestly, I couldn't agree more.
Right.
And what our natural bent, right, as you kind of just said, is to go towards that animalistic side, to
Right.
go towards that narcissism. Even I would throw out, if I could throw out a bold word, is
That's true.
that's our natural tendency to go towards those sides. And so to say, no, no, I'm going to fight for positivity, fight for affirmation, fight for healthiness. Even in the cold, even in 2020, it was hard to even fight for healthiness, where it's so easy to step into unhealthy patterns, unhealthy rhythms, unhealthy
Right.
thought life.
And I like to think of it as like this amazing analogy I heard, where the only reason why we have the tendency to um, act negatively or think negatively or say negative things or just be negative is generally because there's simply more negative energy in the world. Like there's a
Hmm.
scale, almost like an energetic scale in the world or in the universe, where if we're able to transform enough of that negative to positive, all we need is a balance, and then you get neutral. This is how I think of it. I learned it this way. Amazing. Where we need to make it neutral. Right now there's like 80% negative, 20% positive. Obviously there's no actual number to equate that, but it's just a cool
Hmm.
analogy. If we're able to transform 30% of the negative and get 50 negative, 50 positive, then basically like God or the universe's light will shine directly into the world and into people's lives and create positive energy, create
Hmm.
neutral energy, and everyone will be peace, unity, and love each other again. Right now, I think we can all agree there's surplus of negative, right?
I Yeah, absolutely. There's a phrase that I gravitate towards as well, which is, are you trying to be part of the problem or part of the solution?
Mhm.
And so often we consciously or subconsciously contribute to the problem,
Right.
because again, like we said, we have a tendency towards unhealthiness and towards our pride and towards our egocentrism, and so what does that look like? So no, 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 I want to combat against that, because there's way too much of that in the world right now,
Right.
and we just look at the news. That's all you see is just negative and people attacking each other, and even again in a political, charged moments that we have even in nowadays, like it's just people bashing each other. And as you said, this negative, if there's like a negative to a negative to positive scale, negative is way heavier right now. And so
Right.
how
Right.
can I choose, Tony Villafane, in my sphere of influence, how can I choose to be part of the solution rather than be part of the problem?
Right.
And
And
if
I
I
think
think that
it's yeah, and I think it's so sad that like people on the surface level, even the political world, they do have, or they believe that they have positive intentions, and maybe they do have positive intentions, right?
sure.
But nevertheless, at the end of the day, some of the things that people do, and I'm not going to name any names or any sides or whatever, both sides are all sides. There's not just right and left, right? There's middle, there's green, there's whatever. All sides
Uh-huh.
have their own way of pushing forward their own agendas, but sometimes it's not the right way to do it, and it just causes the problem to increase and causes more negative to be created, right?
Well, and obviously, I don't think the goal here is that we're going to go super political, right?
No,
But
no.
I will say this: like, I think that when it comes to sides, like political parties and sides, I think that some of these parties and these genuinely think they are the savior of the universe,
Right, right, right.
and they
It's
genuinely
true.
think that they hold all the cards of what's right and what's wrong, like
And the
telling people
people on
what's
the
wrong.
surfaces of these political parties think that they're warriors for that truth that needs to come out, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, I just I don't know, this is just my opinion, but I don't think that's right. That like one side has all of the right
I
answers.
agree. There's
And
an
so
analogy for that. It's left wing and right wing are all equally necessary to keep the bird in balance because it's a one bird.
oh yeah.
So that bird, I don't know, you can call it the American eagle. I don't know if it's for America, but if one of the
No.
sides is heavier than the other, it's gonna go wee and it's gonna hit the ground and it's gonna crash.
Yep.
And right.
Yeah. I mean, I can see validity to that, right? And
Hmm.
so, though anyone on the left or the right would say, no, the other person is of the devil, and
Hmm.
we don't need them, but maybe actually we do.
Right.
In this like checks and balances kind of a life that I don't know, I think we're supposed to live in, having checks and balances and accountability.
Right. And
But
I agree.
yeah, and I don't know, even earlier when you mentioned you used the phrase like perception like shapes your reality, and even as we like step in, we continue to live in this world. Are we going to be part of the problem? Are we going to be part of the solution? But
Exactly.
the reality is that what I see, what I perceive, what my convictions are, is going to drive the way I live, whether they're right or whether they're wrong. My
Exactly.
perception is going to help shape my reality. So
And
I could
quite
be
frankly,
completely wrong.
it doesn't even matter if they're right or wrong, right? At the end of the day, if it's a positive perception, it doesn't matter if it's actually a good event because at the end of the day, if you're in the wrong frame of mind, even during a time of suffering, even during a time of negative, the outcome will then be negative. If you want to
Right.
go to the negative with a positive frame of mind and and take out the positive and expose it, that's what we should be doing, right? And I love
Hmm.
what you just said. That's exactly what I how I think.
Yeah, and so like a comical example, right? Like perception shaping reality is like, okay, if I think that jeans are pure evil for whatever reason, denim, it's evil, whatever. Like my reality is that I'm never gonna wear jeans, right? Like
Right.
I could be completely wrong, but my perception is shaping my reality. If I think Apple products are better than Android or PC, which I think they are, my reality is that I will not purchase Android or PC
Right.
products. Sorry for
Right.
anyone listening if you're an Android or PC lover. I still love you. But you're wrong. No, you're not. If I think that the Republican Party is evil, then I will not ascribe to the Republican Party, and vice versa, right? And so, but
Exactly.
like, because how I perceive it will inevitably shape how I drive forward,
That's
and our
exactly
perception
correct.
drives us deeper into our beliefs, into our convictions, and the tricky part is that our perception is subjective,
Right.
but it's also in a weird way it's subjective because it's our way of thinking. So we think it's subjective, our perception, but the reality is that if we're being honest, that many times our perceptions are subjective. But how do we teeter that line, right? Is the kind of the thing to process over.
Because it's
And I
if
don't
it's true for you, then that becomes objective for you, but it is nevertheless still subjective to everyone else. Exactly.
right. So what in the heck do we do? Is
Right.
kind of like the question, and how do you navigate that? And I don't have an answer to that, but like it's the thing that kind of gets me going and thinking, because we live in a world that there's moral relativism, like subjectivity, all like where it's like, no, like you do what's good, like what's good for you is good for you, what's good for me is good for me. You don't offend me, I don't offend you. We'll be okay. Um, is that always the right way to go? But like but there also is this honoring of other people of differing in opinions, differing in beliefs, differing in convictions. There is an honoring to someone to have a cordial conversation with them if you differ. But like, yeah. So again, it's just this weird conversation that again,
Right.
subjectivity, objectivity, but inevitably, regardless, the point is that shapes your reality, and how you choose to be part of the solution or part of the problem in the world.
Right. And going back to what we were speaking of, social institutions such as politics and society and government and family, even religion, friends, celebrities, public figures, and like so many
Mhm.
more, like social media, the news, advertising, influencers online on social media. How do we make sure that our perceptions themselves are not being influenced in the first place by these institutions who we don't know if they have the positive intentions for us or evil intentions for us, right?
Yeah. No, talk about talk about a loaded question.
Right.
Because there are evil institutions in the world, but there's also really, really positive and healthy ones. And how do we discern and pick out the ones that are and the ones that aren't? And that's why there is kind of going back to that, like having like a healthy people around you is so crucial, because uh, we're quick to live in our subjective opinions, and we need to have other outsider perspectives to feed
I
into
agree.
um, uh, Are you in the right train of thought? Is this an unhealthy train of thought? Are you being problem based? Are you being solution based? And so, so just to say, it's a massive, massive question. But to say, I think that we need to, it calls for deeper levels of discernment, rather than just being a consumer. Be willing to say, well, why is that? Like, if government says this, okay, well, why for a second? Not in an aggressive way, not in a disrespectful
In
way,
a
but just
curious
in
way.
precisely. Because here's the
Right.
thing, we can be really good at receiving information without questioning it, just
Hmm.
because that's what the big man upstairs says. That's what my school is saying. That's what the government's saying. Yada yada. And again, I'm not saying to being disrespectful. I'm saying sometimes we can be quick just to receive without critically thinking
It's true.
ourselves of like, oh, well, do I agree with that? Oh, like, do I believe that, or does that go against my convictions?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so how do I think that? And even as I think about like America, right? We have there's massive cultures, subcultures within America, right? And sometimes, even again, this is just my perspective, just my opinion, but sometimes I think that even American culture as a whole could push us towards conformity, rather than individuality, right? Because it's all about this like consumeristic mentality: consume, 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 and we're fed, advertisements and shows, and all these different ideologies that are kind of pushed kind of subconsciously or consciously through these stuff. But rather than celebrating individuality, I sometimes think that like some of our American culture can celebrate and push ideals and norms, and if you don't kind of fit those boxes, you're weird, you're an outcast, you're left out, or you don't belong.
Right.
And this can be pushed through family, religion, public figures, and social media. And though a ton is good has come out of these things, a ton of good has come out of social media, a ton of good has come out of government, a ton of good has come out of public figures. But we can also sometimes set us up to fail by pushing them to look like certain ideals or images that might not necessarily be us or our convictions.
Exactly.
And again, kind of pushing us toward this conformity, rather than celebrating some individuality, and almost not setting us up to fail. In that sense, can sometimes feel like what's happening in even some of our America social institutions. So sorry,
Right. And that's
that was a
something
lot. That was a lot of thought.
and that's something I personally lived through, right? I think we've all gone through that at some point in our childhood or in our life where we were questioning, should I conform? Should I act like my friends are so that they accept me as one of them? So I am part of society. And
Mhm.
I had to live through that through myself. I actually enjoyed not being in conformity. And I think that's just because I'm an attention seeking, child. But
Sure.
and that's lived on to today. I enjoy not conforming, and that is probably due to my egotistic self. But
Mm,
also at the same time, it kind of gives me a window of opportunity, and it allows me to express my open-mindedness, and it speaks to the
mm.
importance of being open-minded in the first place, right? How important do you think that it is to be open-minded?
Yeah. No, crucially, right? Like like crucially all capital letters. Like we need to have a posture of being a learner. Now, again, please don't hear me when I'm saying that I think that we should never listen to authority above us or respect, the school systems or rules or law. Like obviously we totally should. But the thought comes to mind is, how much am I truly saying, hey, I want to have the posture of a learner. I want to have the posture of open-mindedness. I want to have the posture of, I don't have all the answers, and I want to be willing to put myself, sometimes we don't like this word, but like put us in the posture of like submission of like, I want to learn from you. And if there's people that are much smarter than me, like government officials, school systems, or public figures who are wise beyond their years, I want to listen to them. Now, I don't want to treat them like God, and I want to treat them like they have all the answers, but I do want to respect them and honor them. I do want to listen to them when it seems like they're in a healthy frame of mind. But I also want to say, okay, well, like, what do I think about that? How do I process that? What does that mean for me? Again, without turning it into this ego trip, but like, what does this mean for me, and how can I have the posture of a learner? Again, I think it's just so crucial for us as influencers, as leaders, as human beings. I think if we had a lot more people who are willing to accept that they don't have all the answers, or accept the idea that they are wrong sometimes. Crazy
Right.
thought that you're wrong sometime. But
Right.
like, if you're willing to sit in that, I think it's a game changer, with the way that we live, interact with other people, in our jobs, in our families, to have this posture of being a learner, and willing to say, anyone I can learn from. No one is below me that I can learn from somebody.
Right. And I think I want to emphasize one thing you said about still they are not God, right? So we have to bring in the picture
Mm.
of God in this. So let's take a segue into religion and spirituality. I think that was a
Yeah.
perfect transition. What do you think?
No, man. Yeah, because like, yeah, they're like, again, institutions are not God. Again, obviously, you can have a full on debate of, is there a God? What do you do with, if he does exist? What do you do with the God, and so on and so forth? Like, even like, you think about like spirituality, you think about religion, some of these words that are thrown into it. And I even took a look at Merriam, our good old friend Merriam-Webster dictionary, and saw what Merriam had to say about spirituality and religion. So spirituality, the definition was this: sensitivity or attachment to religious values. Sensitivity or attachment to religious values. And then religion is a personal set of institutionalized system of religious attitudes, beliefs, and practices. And so the fact of the matter is that we do live in a world where many people ascribe to a religion or live in spirituality, and
Over
that
half
is
the world, over half, I think you
right.
did a statistic, over half the world is at least ascribing to a religious institution or belief system.
Yeah. So you can't get away from it. Like even if someone says, "Oh, I'm not religious," or "I don't have any spirit," like you can't get away from the fact that it's in our world.
Right.
Um, I could even say to that person, willing to have a posture of open mindedness, or willing to just learn, even if you disagree at the end of the day, to still learn from the person who has a religious belief or a spiritual belief of some kind. But you're right. The fact of the matter is it is over half the world of the people ascribe to some type of religion or spirituality. And so what do we do with that, with the hundreds and thousands even of like differing perspectives on belief and religiosity and all the other stuff? But the way that I would even describe spirituality for personally is like living in a heightened sense to the supernatural world around you, and a sense of conviction as you choose to ascribe to a certain religious code or value system. And so I'll say that again: spirituality is living in a heightened sense to the spiritual world around you, and a sense of conviction as you choose to ascribe to a certain religious code or value system. And so we're kind of like almost realizing there's more to this material world. Again, if you ascribe to even a spirituality period, but like the idea that there's more than the physical material world around us.
I like that definition. Yeah, and I think, well, my definition of spirituality is along those lines, except it's more so about the frame of mind. So my definition of being a spiritual person is your level at which you're capable of restricting your negativity, like restricting your
Hmm.
negative tendency. That to me is like that's how you can determine the level of spirituality that you're at. But also
Yeah.
we have to include that higher power figure. So I do believe in like things like energy, like not just physical energy like gravity, but spiritual energy. I made a whole video about spiritual energy just the other week, and it talks to the idea of positive, negative, and neutral, which we have discussed in this conversation, and the importance of it and how valuable it is. How every single time, just us conversing right now, is an
Hmm.
exchange of, yes, words and thoughts and ideas, but also spiritual energy. I think we're both in a state of
Hmm.
positive right now, so we're both giving and giving to each other our knowledge, our information, our time. And other than the physical, it's also a spiritual connection with everything. Even thinking of something, there's a transference of some sort of energy, or I don't know, there's lingering energies around us at all times which influence our thoughts, I think. And so that speaks to the idea of like there is something, and I always say this to my friends who don't really seem to believe in these things. I urge them to consider the possibility that there is something beyond the physical, that there's something beyond what you can
Hmm.
see, what you can touch, hear, smell, and whatever other senses that we have of temperature. I know they said there's more than five senses. Okay, even more than those, even more than those. There's
Right.
something beyond the physical. And I don't think that you can get to any other answer other than there being something beyond physical when you think about the creation of the world, or some people don't like to use the word creation. Okay, the existence of the universe, how that
Yeah.
came into existence. And they say, oh, well, it doesn't really matter. It's not really a scientific question. It just happened. It's a cycle. Well, what
Hmm.
started it, right? And that to me, and I think that the idea of a higher power is the best explanation for it all.
Hmm. Yeah. And I wouldn't disagree. And but at the same time, right, there's so many different perspectives, so many different opinions, convictions, and beliefs about it. And even when you think about, even finding spirituality, when you think about like, oh, like, okay, cool, like I want to know what spirituality is, but like how do I get there? Or religion, how do I get there? What do I do? It's kind of this like mystical up in the sky, like what do I do? How do I start? So like there's this piece of me that would even say like you find spirituality by being okay with asking questions. We've already talked about this to some degree, like this posture of a learner. So you can kind of even see some themes kind of running,
Open-mindedness.
right?
Right.
Precisely, right? Open-mindedness, being okay with asking questions. And here's one that could maybe hit our ego, but being okay with not being okay with autonomy, meaning I'm not the center of the universe. We so easily wear this like this thing on our shoulder of I am literally the most important person in the universe. I'm sorry, you're not. Like I'm not. And you yes, you're an important person and you are valuable and you have something to contribute to the world and to society, and don't you dare let anyone tell you otherwise. But you are not the center of the universe at the same
Right.
time.
Right.
And so if we come to the point of realizing how to finding spirituality, like I'm going to ask questions and realize I'm not the center of the universe. And it's going to cause me to strike curiosity, to
Mhm.
ask questions.
And I think we need
And
someone to slap us in the face and tell that to us, because some people have forgot that we are not, the world does not revolve around our ideas, our perceptions, right? So for example, even though your reality might have been shaped on your positive perceptions and you're living a good life, doesn't mean that the reality for everyone is that way. So it goes into
yeah.
the idea of empathizing with people, trying to solve each other's problems together,
Mm,
and it brings about that sense of unity. So one of the things that I really enjoy is this idea of restricting selfishness and engaging in selflessness, right? So like kind
mm,
of that's like beating the ego and aiding the soul in a way. So
yeah.
in my mind, actually, I don't really think of them as opposites. In some way I do, in another way I don't. So in the level in which I don't think that they're opposites, sometimes they can work together, being selfish and selfless, in that,
Mm,
so by being selfless, people think that's not selfish, but it could be, because what if you're being selfless for the purpose of making yourself feel better? What if you're
mm.
being selfless for the purpose of, I don't know, getting bonus points in your religion, right? Whatever it is that
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah,
believe.
right, right.
So I think it goes back to the intention. What is your intention in donating
Mm,
$1 billion to this organization, right? Is your name going to be on it? Or
yeah.
is there going to be a building created in your name? And most likely, some sort of recognition will be there, and an ounce of that selflessness will be hidden because it's being overtaken by the selfishness. Which is
Mm,
not saying that it's not good to donate in your name, but it would be an even higher spiritual form of giving and connection if you did it in anonymity, or if you did it out of pure selflessness, pure intent.
yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right, because also, but then at the same time, we also don't want to say, oh, that person who gave $1 billion, like, oh, don't give $1 billion because your heart's not in the right place. Obviously, giving money to a nonprofit organization or to something that's a worthwhile cause is a great thing, and we never want to discourage that. However, you do prick at something that's fascinating, which is, what is the intention of your heart, right? What is the intention of your motives? Why are you doing what you're about to do? Because I agree with you, we need to be we need more selfless people in the world, because we have way too many selfish people. And we don't need more selfish people, so please be selfless. But you're like, okay, cool, that's easier said than done. Agreed. But it's worth pursuing. And it's worth pursuing this idea of selflessness, of, okay, how am I again, a whole concept of how am I trying to be a part of the solution rather than being part of the problem? How am I trying to serve people, get my mind off of myself, and I'm going to go and be loving and kind. I love to use the word empathetic, because that's something that we are not good at. We are not good at empathy. One of the coolest definitions or whatever I've heard of empathy before, is the ability to abandon your reality and step into the reality of the person
I
across from you.
love that. I love
Um,
that.
it rattles me in the coolest ways, because what do? The reason why we start with empathy is because we sit in our reality way too much, and we're narrow minded in our perspectives. And so,
Hmm.
what would it look like if we said, okay, I'm going to abandon my world, and I'm going to step into the world, step into the reality of the person across from me who is dealing with the death of a loved one, who is dealing with a divorce, who's dealing with the continuation of COVID ramifications, who is dealing with X, Y, Z, what, fill in the blank, whatever it is. Because again, it's not usually our natural tendency to be empathizers, but I think we need it in the name of
Mm,
selflessness, in the way of
for
contributing to the
sure.
good in the society. Again, creating more positive energy, as you've said, and be, I mean, if I may say, be willing to give a crap. Like,
Mhm.
be willing to give a crap about the person across from you, rather than always just thinking about yourself.
Right, 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 right.
And spirituality has a lot to do with that, right? Where you're asking questions, you're not thinking about yourself. And also even in a I don't know, a bigger sense, a meta sense, is like asking bigger questions, like where do we come from? What's the point of human existence? Is there a moral code that we ought to live by? What happens after we die? Right? Totally easy questions to answer, right? but like,
Oh, very
but
easy.
the
Just search it on Google, right? And then you'll get a few
that's
answers.
right. That's I mean, Google is divine, right? And so, but no, like being willing to answer some of those questions, because the more that you can grapple with some of these bigger questions, I think it provides more clarity on why you exist and what you ought to be doing. It provides purpose and a sense of meaning, um, a reason to live, and with the skills and the talents and the personality traits that you have. Like I think it provides tangibility to what we ought to be doing.
Hmm.
And so, and a lot, again, all that is kind of encompassed in some of the spirituality, religion type of conversation.
Hmm. And speaking of spirituality, what is your favorite universal principle or spiritual law, or whether it's ascribed to your religion or whatever? What is your favorite supernatural ideology?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and a handful of thoughts come to mind, but just a couple of them is uh, everything happens for a reason. The
Mhm.
Again, if I think through a narrative of there is a God who is in control, everything happens for a reason. There is not something that happens for no reason, just by sheer luck. Even like there's everything happens for a very specific reason within your life. It's just searching the meaning and searching the
Right.
reason behind why. This is kind of a personal, almost like a leadership one, kind of an idea, but like fail to learn from the past or be doomed to repeat it. And so that's a principle I think that we
Mm,
need to step into more
I love
deeply. Is
that.
fail to
Yeah.
learn from the past or be
Like
doomed to repeat it.
learn from the past. This is what I like to think of it. Like learn from the past, be in the present, and prepare for the future. All those three
Hmm.
things, if you can do that, I think we'll be in a much better place in our lives, right?
Yeah.
If we were just remembered that.
No, absolutely. Another one for me is love covers a multitude of sins. And this idea of, man, we ought to look around and be gracious to the people around us, ought to be forgiving, knowing that love, that when someone wrongs you, you don't hold it against them. Does that mean that we don't have accountability? No, we still have accountability, but we don't grudgingly hold it against them for the rest of their life. And love covers a multitude of sins. Um,
Absolutely.
Another one, thinking about like autonomy or our own ego, is that, man, we just need to stop taking ourselves too seriously. Sometimes we take ourselves way more seriously than we ought to, and just be willing to laugh at yourself, laugh with the people around you, poke fun at yourself. Even that's something that in a weird way, I've tried to do, just to not let myself be taken so seriously,
Right.
knowing that I make mistakes, and I goof up, and I can act immature sometimes, and that's okay, right?
Hmm.
And so, and then another one that comes to mind is like this idea of growing in self awareness. And so, the deeper you grow in self awareness, the more equipped become to be all that God has wired you to be. And so, the deeper that you grow in, okay, who am I? What do I have in my skills and my arsenal and my giftings, etc. The more that I become, the more that I know that, the more equipped I become
Mm.
to become all that God has called me to be.
That's probably one of the most important ones. First, the first step in being able to do a spiritual transformation is to be aware that you have the ability to do it, that you to be aware that the spiritual transformation is possible, or
Yeah.
being conscious of the possibility of that higher power. That's the first step in being able to
Mhm.
go towards that spiritual transformation. So I really like that one.
Yeah.
Going back to the one you were talking about, love covers a multitude of sins. I wanted to just chime in a little bit on that. I it's so important. It's so important. Like people think that once they've screwed up their lives, that they're done. They think that once
Hmm.
they've done so many bad things in their lives, there's no more hope for them in terms of whether
Sure.
it's because of their religion or their belief system, or just society will not accept them, or they will not
Sure.
accept themselves. And so I feel like that's one of probably the second most important one of the ones that you said. Something that I practice is every single night before I go to bed, before I sleep, is I forgive everyone and I forgive myself for having hurt
Hmm.
anyone, if that happened. And whether or
Sure.
not it happened, I say to myself, like, and I forgive anyone who didn't intentionally do it, or intentionally, and I forgive myself if I had done something that I didn't know was offensive to someone or had hurt someone. And that helps me have a very clear mind. And I also look at my dreams as an indication. I don't know how your
Hmm.
dreams are, but whenever I wake up in the morning, if I have a vivid dream and I remember it, or sometimes even lucid dreams, it's to me as an indication of where my mental state is at. So like if I have nightmares, if I have a cluttered dream, or kind of like meaningless, trashy dreams that are just an accumulation of all my worries and fears, I really look at that and it makes me realize that I have to do something to clear my mind a little bit, put myself back on the right track, get in that state of neutrality again so I can have peace in my mind and in the world around me.
Um, I chuckle because I think about, I'm like, as soon as you said that, I started thinking about my dreams. I'm like, oh gosh, what what does that say about the mental state of me when I think about some of my dreams? Because it's, yeah, like I can agree with you though that sometimes like what's going on in your subconscious really can be a tell of maybe what's going on in your life right now.
Right,
um,
right,
or it could be stuff that you've buried that you're not willing to deal with or
right. Or
process
acknowledge. Right.
or knowledge, right? And so, um, but but yeah, again, and even as you said, another thing that come to mind, this kind of speaks more towards maybe even like my religion, if you call it, but like love your neighbor as yourself, like kind of speaks more to this like selflessness attitude of that I'm gonna love the person next to me, but I'm gonna love them as I know I love myself because I'm really good at loving myself.
Mm,
I can be too good at that sometimes, right? And
mm,
so, what does it look like to say, no, I'm gonna, I know how well I love myself, but I'm gonna in turn go and I'm gonna love somebody else in the same way.
mm.
Again, I think is a huge piece to living in even a healthy spiritual framework, because the fact of the matter is like spirituality is such a weird thing. Like, let's
Yeah,
just be honest, it's a weird thing when you
it
think about
is.
it. Because, and I'm fascinated by the power that spirituality has.
Mhm.
It's a funky, it's a weird thing. But here's the thing: spirituality and religion has the power that causes people to go through the worst circumstances in life to not lose hope. That's a crazy power. It also has the power to start wars and kill hundreds of thousands of people, as we've seen in our history. It has the power to move people to change their whole lifestyle. It has the power that allows people to die, literally die for what they believe. And you're like, whew, like this thing called spirituality and religion, whether you agree or disagree with what actually is like objective in the world, you cannot deny it has a power in this
Oh
world
yes,
over people.
absolutely.
And we can't deny that. And then we just now have to say, okay, well, what do I believe? What do I think about it? How do I process through it? Again, asking some of those bigger questions about where the world come from. What's the role? What's the purpose of man and women in life and morality and death and again, those really play into how we chart the rest of our life.
Absolutely, absolutely, yes. And I think like whenever I look outside of my window, sometimes I see like people biking, people in their cars, and I always wonder like I wonder how many of these people are seriously woke. How many people are actually awake right now?
Yeah.
Like I feel like people are walking down the sidewalk and they don't even know that they're alive. Like sometimes I just see
Mm,
like I wish, and that's not an insult to anyone. I don't want to offend anyone when I say that, but
of course.
like I feel whenever we question our reality and whenever we question our existence or actually be more observant in our lives, like that's how we can get towards that spiritual awakening. That's how we can go towards that pursuit of truth and happiness whenever you know what's going on, or at least believe to know what's going on, right?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And yeah, it is a weird thing to kind of, again, because you don't want to like be offensive when you like say
Right.
like, oh, like are there people who are like spiritually woke? Like uh it you can have your guesses and you can have your like perceptions of other people's realities or other
Right.
people's thoughts about where they're at with their spirituality, but at the end of the day, right, it's their spirituality, it's
Mhm.
their religion or lack of religion.
Right.
And again, trusting that, okay, I can't force anything on them, but I can be the best me I possibly can be, and I can live in the deepest conviction I possibly can be in the name of my
Exactly. Yeah.
spirituality, in the name of my religion, in the name of selflessness, because I can only impact me.
Right.
And I
Right.
can try to have a footprint and in my sphere of influence. But at the end of the day, you can only take care of you
It's their
and be the
choice.
best you,
Yeah.
right? Because it's their choice,
Right.
precisely.
Being
Yeah.
given the opportunity, giving them the opportunity is the extent to how much you can help them. I think to me, being that person who can give them the opportunity to go towards that direction, towards the positive direction of spirituality and transformation, personal growth, self-betterment, self-improvement, the opportunity, I think that's our job. People uh, who are aware of this other world,
Sure.
to give it to the people who might not know that yet or might not be there yet at that stage of their lives,
Hmm.
so that they can go in and jump into the train and be on their way towards that path of happiness and pursuit of truth.
Agreed. And I think that again, it's not our job to force it down their throats.
Right.
Shame on us if we're doing that. It's our job to present an idea you've heard the phrase, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink the water or whatever.
Hmm.
Like our job is to, like, I would say, like, those who ascribe towards spirituality, religion, and we would say how it has drastically benefited our lives, and made us more positive people or healthier people or whatever. I'm not saying it's like perfect. I'm just saying that it does help, that we can try to make it appealable. That we try to make it like, hey, like, this is a good thing to try to think through and to process, without, again, teetering this line, without being like, you got to believe this is the right thing to believe, and respecting their beliefs, respecting the person, but while saying, no, I'm convicted about this. I love you too much to not share this. And I
Right.
want to, I want to
Exactly.
be willing to I want to be willing to share this with you. Would you allow me to process with you? I
And
don't
that's
know.
sometimes what it comes down to. I love you too much to not share this amazing fact or belief with you because it's helped me so much. I've seen the evidence of it for my own life. I've been
Hmm.
experiencing it, and I want you to experience it as well. It goes back to that idea of, you know it because you've experienced it and you want other people to experience it as well. But it does,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, whether or not you believe is the dividing line. If you truly believe it's helping you, that's where perceptions shape reality. And if you don't,
Hmm.
that's where perceptions still shape your reality into not having that idealistic reality that you're looking for.
Absolutely.
So let's take a little bit of an interesting turn here. Have you ever witnessed anything that was questionable according to the laws of physics and science? Maybe something supernatural, maybe something that is unexplainable, some phenomena that
Yeah,
science does not have a definition for in their books?
man. That's a great question, dude. I, you know, yes, I do, and I think that, there are things that baffle me to this day. I'm like, how in the ever loving world did that make sense, or did that happen? But even if I could, like, just generalize it for a second, I think supernaturally, like the fact that, just seeing a sunrise or a sunset is so radiantly beautiful. I'm
Mm.
like, I look at that and I'm like, again, personally, Tony's perspective, how could there not be a creator? How could there not be someone who intrinsically designed this, with beauty and magnificence? Even thinking about the fact that the earth doesn't burn up from the sun,
I'm
the
literally
fact that,
getting the chills right now listening to you because it's
like,
just so true. It's so true how amazing everything is.
right, like, again, and this is the idea of getting out of yourself, right, out of your narrow-minded perspectives, like, man, like, the world is so much bigger than you, and you look around, and again, looking at even thinking of the example of the sun, like, the earth is positioned scientifically, is positioned in such a way that if the earth was tilted 1 degree differently, the earth would literally burn up, or we would freeze to death. Like, you can't, again, my opinion, anyone listening, free to disagree with me, but, like, I don't think you can say, oh, it just popped into existence, it with an earth that's literally 1 degree different, and we would burn up from the sun, or we'd freeze to death.
Right.
And so many other things within the earth, within the way that the earth is formed, that we, again, it's hard for me to say and look at the earth and say, oh yeah, they just happened by chance. And
Right.
so, again, in some sense, that's a supernatural for me. Like, I
Right.
can look around and see the world on a daily. But then if I get more specific, I also see, personally, I've watched someone be healed before, when they were
Mm.
prayed over. So I've seen physical healing happen.
Wow.
It's a long story, but I have also basically seen someone released from, uh, here's another touchy one, but demonic oppression.
Wow.
Where, again, like, if we step into idea of a spiritual realm, I would say I see that there can be angels, or there could be demons, or there could be just, again, negative influences in this world. So personally, again, I've seen someone, released from a demonic oppression, and so that was a
Mm.
supernatural
Wow.
encounter. I have personally, felt God, leading me, to share, words of encouragement to people, where this, like,
Wow.
nagging sensation of, like, it won't leave me until I go and talk to that person. Um, I think I would say that's a supernatural encounter, within my own mind, and with God connecting with me and talking with me, like, hey, like, you need to go share a word with this person. You need to go encourage this person. You need to go be, be loving to them.
Right. And for
And then
those listening at home, sorry to cut you off, just an important note that people should consider is the names that we put on these forces and energies is irrelevant. I think that as long as we acknowledge the idea of the existence of the energy, of that negative force, of that positive force, a higher power, that's enough to me, because people have their own beliefs and ideas on what you're saying. And I totally agree with you. So like, instead of calling it a demon, someone else might call it a negative energy, or someone might call an angel a positive energy, a positive force. Someone might call God a universal consciousness, which is totally fine because they serve the same functions as whatever we would have called it previously.
That's just a piece of my experiences around the supernatural, full well knowing you talk to the next person, they're going to give a vast array of different supernatural experiences. Talk to the next person, vast array of different. So it's like, but again, that's mine though.
That's incredible. Wow, that's really amazing. So, for people who are looking to increase their spiritual self and look into the idea of the existence of a soul and a higher power, what are some ways that they can first benefit? Before we want to get into the process of getting there, why should anyone do it in the first place? What's in it for them? That's probably the mindset of most people. What's in it for most people? What do you think is in it for them?
Yeah, and you know what, Nathan, like that's the oxymoron of spirituality and religion in some sense. That like you ask the question like, what's in it for me? Sometimes the fact of the matter is, uh, it's not for you. Like it's for the person next to you. It's for your spouse. It's for your teammate. It's for your neighbor. Furthering yourself as a selfless human being is exactly what the word is. It's selfless. It's not selfish. Selfish is like, what's in it for me? It's like, hey, oh, what can I get out of it? Well, there's a lot of things technically that you can get out of spirituality and religion and ascribing towards a particular religion. But I also would say that if you are thinking in the lens of what's in it for me, I think that you might be doing it wrong. Like, and I could be completely wrong, but like,
I
because again,
agree.
I think some of the point of religion and spirituality is not for what's in it for me. It's how can I be a better person, a person who takes life seriously and answers the tough questions, and I'm selfless and I'm trying to live with a purpose. Sometimes you realize again, it's less for you and more for the other person. But I will say this though, that there are studies shown all over the place
I was
that
gonna say,
those,
yeah,
yep,
yeah,
that
so many
those who
statistics.
those who choose to live in a religiosity or a spiritual lens, that show that they have longer lives, that they're more hopeful in life, that there's this like mental and mental grits or spiritual grit to them, and you kind of look at that and you're like, oh, like you kind of can't deny that, like because there
Right.
is scientific research studies that back that up. So what's in it for you, man? A longer life. Who doesn't want that? Mental tenacity when you're going through difficulties. Who doesn't want that?
A stronger sense
The
of a community. That's one.
Yeah, who doesn't want that, right? The ability to do better good in this world. Who doesn't want that? But again, we are quick to be selfish and we're quick to think in our own lenses. So it's saying no to myself and my selfishness and saying yes to loving my neighbor, yes to a higher power, yes to a purpose that might be bigger than me, but I have a role to play in that.
Right.
Um,
Any attempt to transform yourself for the better is a minor spiritual transformation. That's somewhere that people can start, whether or not you want to tie it to a higher power. You should. I mean, that's idealistically the best way to go about doing it. Whenever you understand that you are not in full control of what happens in the world, in your life, in your personal life. What you are in control of is how you perceive it, right, and how you react to certain things, right. So whenever like someone punches you, you are in control of how you respond to his punch. But you're not always responsible for his punch, right? You're not always going to be able to control his reaction to what you do. So that's something that people should keep in mind. Like just the act of bettering yourself and self-improving yourself is in a way a spiritual transformation, right?
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And again, even kind of thinking back to what I said about even like what is like spirituality, right? It's living in this like heightened sense to a supernatural world around you and
Right.
a sense of conviction as you choose to ascribe to a religious code or value system. Um,
Exactly.
and if we can take that seriously and do it intentionally, definitely do it not perfectly. But if we try our best, work at it our hardest, live in graciousness, live in still working towards living towards what the truth that you would ascribe towards, whether it's a religion, a set of values, whatever. I think the world's going to be a better place.
Right.
Again, when we think about trying to live more selflessly and selfishly.
Right, through focusing on bettering yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, and the people around you, physically, mentally, and emotionally. It's good for your mind, literally your body and your soul, if that's something that you will
Hmm.
let me say.
Yeah,
Gives your life
totally.
a sense of
Hmm.
purpose and meaning. It allows you to have something to look forward to and strive for, and some sort of reasoning for existence. That's something that I think everyone's looking for, what at any age of their life, from the moment that they're 13 until the age they die. If they don't happen to find it, they'll constantly be looking at that question and saying, I don't know what the answer to that question is. Let me go find it, right? Or I
Yep.
feel like I should be looking for that answer. It helps let go of past grudges. Like for some people who have gone through past traumas or negative events in their lives have transpired. It helps people let go and just accept that what happens is for a reason, that there's a higher power, higher image here, and a world that you might not be able to see, but it is in play. There's some sort of plan here that you don't always have control over, like we said, and move on with your life.
Hmm.
And ultimately, to
Yeah.
create peace in and around your life. That is the
Hmm.
ultimate purpose. This was an amazing conversation, Tony. Thank you
Hmm.
so much for coming onto the Lifted Talks podcast. I hope to have you on the show again.
Yeah, no, thank you. Nate, it was a privilege. It's an honor. It was a fantastic dialogue. I know that I am better because haven't been able to talk and dialogue with you, man. So
Thank
thank you.
you. Likewise. Thanks.